in the age of AI, APIs are becoming even more important because when we're trying to build things using agents, the way agents interact with all these platforms is via MCP servers. And MCP servers rely on APIs in order to carry out all the desired actions in the downstream platforms. So in this example here, whenever the AI brain wants to make a request in Marketo, it sends that request to the MCP server and it gets translated to a Marketo API request, which then carries out the action in Marketo. So that's why APIs are more important than ever, because they power the MCP servers that in turn power AI agents. And this allows us to build powerful agents that can help us out. So in this example here, this is how you can build a Slack agent. So in this example here, when we get a notification to Slack saying this lead MQL'd, a salesperson can ask our RevOps bot, why did this lead MQL? So that request gets sent from Slack to OpenAI via this listener server. And then the OpenAI brain asks itself the question, okay, how do I find out the reason why this lead MQL'd? So then it makes a request to the MCP server to try and find out the activity that that lead carried out. And that gets translated to a Marketo API request to retrieve the lead activity information. This then gets sent back to the AI brain and it forwards it back to the person in Slack. So that's where we get all this information displayed about the person's web page visits in the last 7 days. This was all ultimately retrieved from Marketo using the Marketo API. So this is why APIs are so important for powering the agentic building of the future. And you might be wondering, okay, Tyron, that's really cool and I can see the value there, but isn't Claude Code or AI going to be building all my workflows for me? Why do I need to learn how to make Marketo API requests? And the reason I'd say it's still important to know how to make API requests is because, especially with some of the more niche Marketo API requests where there are not a lot of examples online and the documentation isn't great, the AI might make the API request incorrectly. And especially when I was first experimenting with the Marketo API 4 or 5 years ago now, there was very sparse documentation on a lot of the API requests, and I had to experiment and play around with the request in order to get it to work correctly or in order to get it to do what I wanted. So that's why I still think it's very valuable for you to know how to search the Marketo API docs for the functionality you're interested in, see how the API call needs to be configured, test the call in Postman, then export the request in Python code, and then hand that over to an AI agent once you know it's working. And it's also important to point out that there's a lot of nuance to the Marketo API that you want to make sure your AI agent knows about. So for example, when you're merging duplicates, the value for a Boolean field that is prioritized is false. So if one lead has false and the other lead has true, the value that will be prioritized is the false value. So just make sure that that is something that you're happy with in your workflows, because something like that could cause a lot of issues, especially if the Boolean field is used for something like subscription management. You want to avoid your company getting a large fine because when you were merging duplicates via API or your AI agent was merging duplicates via API, it prioritized the incorrect field. So it's important to know all these nuances when you're working with the Marketo API. So you need to understand the API thoroughly yourself so that you can direct your AI agent to build with the correct guardrails and supervision in place.